Hey there, it's Sunday afternoon, slightly later than anticipated. It's 6:10, and I've spent the whole of this afternoon kind of on a roller coaster. Shall I? Can I do the live stream? Can't I? Why is Facebook not letting me on? Everything that I wanted to do today was either done via WhatsApp, which is hi Karen, either done via WhatsApp or done via Facebook, and both of them crashed, and I was just stuck, completely stuck. My life is run by social media. How awful is that? Yeah, you get to see me live. Everything worked out exactly as it should do. So today we're late, of course, so hopefully that means a few more of you will be able to pop on live. We're talking today about, well, again, sort of wrapping up a week's worth of emotional abuse, what we've learned from it, what's come out of it, and today answering any questions that you may have, anything that's come up for you over the course of the week that you're thinking, how do I react to this, or how do I deal with this particular situation, or how do I start that process of change in myself? So a few people did ask some questions in the group, which means that today I'm going to be looking down and checking my phone so that I make sure that I do. Hi, Kim. So that I do make sure that I do answer all the questions that you have. Now, let me make sure that I don't have Facebook open anywhere else. I don't think I do. I think I closed it down. So any beeping is just going to be on this one, so we're not going to get stereo. I just had the most lovely, I think probably hour and a half with Kim. We recorded an interview that we're going to be putting into the group sometime in May, once I manage to do some sort of editing and whatever, and make sure that we've got all the information there. And Kim's got a fantastic story, success story from miserable to perfect, to delightfully happy, and it was so lovely to catch up with her. Hi, Tiffany. Wow, this is so exciting. People are actually here today. It's funny, during the week, of course, we all work and we all have different time scales, and we're all in different time zones. Quite often I find myself sitting here talking to me, which is not a huge problem. I enjoy my own company, but it's nice to have some of you on board too. So today, as I say, emotional abuse, we're just wrapping it up. It's been a really, really interesting week for me, and I'm hugely grateful to all of you for taking part, for taking time to watch the videos. I tried to keep them short so that you would be able to. 11 a.m. Yeah. Oh yeah, so it's not too bad. It's not too bad. So there's 7 hours difference between us. That's not too bad. Yeah, I tried to keep them short enough that you could watch one a day. You weren't going to get too lost with it. If you would like to have them sort of delivered to your inbox, you can, just let me know and I'll give you the link, and I'll put you onto the list where the emails will be sent out each day with the video attached to it. If it's something that you want to hang on to, if it's something that you think you're going to be able to make use of again and again and again, it might be quite useful. Might also be quite useful in with regards to the fact that Facebook crashed today, and I don't have any way of getting in touch with you. Facebook crashes, so if I've got your email address, at least I can send us an email and catch up with you at a certain point. So yeah, that might be an idea. But just to recap on the week, so why did I do this? Well, because communication is the number one breakdown. A communication breakdown is the number one indicator of divorce. It's where it takes us. When we can no longer comfortably and healthily communicate in our relationship, we, quite often the relationship either stagnates and stays that way for the rest of its natural life, or people head towards the divorce court. But if you take it a step back from that communication, why does it break down? Well, quite often it breaks down because of really poor patterns of interaction, learned behaviours, behaviours that have built up in the relationship over time and years and whatever, that have really started to erode the very fabric of the relationship. And often these behaviours are tantamount to emotional abuse. It's that simple. We don't think of it that way. When we think of emotional abuse, we think of that huge, narcissistic personality, or the empathic personality that's been completely downtrodden and squashed, and it's so visible that it's difficult not to understand it's happening. Now, I'm talking about pretty much the same sense of self-doubt, self-loathing, lack of self-belief that goes on, but coming from a completely different way, a completely different type of emotional abuse, an emotional abuse that comes from our own insecurities, our own lack of self-esteem. And when I say our own, it can be either us as the perpetrator, or us as on the receiving end of it. And there are two very different ways that happens. Either, for me, I was on both sides of it. I'm not going to go through the whole story again, because I shared at various points during the week. But certainly my lack of self-esteem, and also my not having any other tools available to me, because my learned pattern of behaviour was passive aggressive. So that's what I took into relationships. On the other side of it, my lack of self-esteem, my lack of self-love, my lack of self-confidence meant that I attracted into my circle people who were emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and used pretty much the same techniques as I was prone to use. We can change them. I changed them. I fall back into it. I'm not perfect. I fall back into it. And last night, I was really tired, and my husband was upsetting me just because he happened to be there. And I found myself really being bitchy and underhand, and muttering at him. And his response to me was to mutter at me under his breath. Now, on a one-off basis, it can happen, and we can accept it and we can move on from it. But when that's the pattern, when that's the base level of your communication, it starts to turn toxic, and we start to have those feelings that we talked about, where you don't feel heard, or when somebody speaks to you, you're not really listening to answer. You're not really listening to hear and to accept what they're saying. You're listening to answer, and you've already got those preconceived ideas of of what they actually mean by that. So you're not open to receiving fresh information. You're not open to believing the words that they say, because you've already decided what they mean. And that was one of the questions that Jana asked, and then also now who was it? I can't remember. Somebody else asked. Kay came on below, and she asked a similar question, but from a slightly different angle. And that's the first place I'm going to start. So let me just read out the question. If you give me 2 seconds, and hopefully I can go onto Facebook this way, and I can get into the group. Where am I? Sorry, this isn't going as smoothly as it might have done at 2 o'clock, but we're getting there. So let me get to Jana. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Right, Jana. So Jana's question for today is, I realised that my husband also makes assumptions about my actions and intentions, that is his perception through his own lens. Often it does not come into discussion because we've both been so closed off, but things are getting much better. If it does come to light that he had perceived my behaviour in a light that I did not mean or intend, how do I set it straight without making him feel invalidated, without saying, you shouldn't feel that way because I didn't mean it that way? Okay, so that's what Jana asked. And that's a common one. And as I touched on a second ago, we often go into conversations with an agenda. And it's not always a conscious agenda, but we have a history with this person. We have a history of having discussions with this person. And often when we go into conversation with them, we believe we know what they're going to say, and we believe we know what they mean. And we answer what we think they're saying, rather than taking time to take a step back, shut off that part of us that is already working on the response that we're going to give, and just listen with the intention of hearing what that person says. And a perfect example would be, if we are confronted by somebody who's saying, I don't know, I think that you mean this, or I'm feeling that, when you say this thing here, then it's to put me down or to do whatever. It's a perfect example of you being able to sit and listen to what that person is saying to. So in Jana's case, when her husband confronts her and makes her feel, or when her husband confronts her and says, when you say that thing, I feel like this. Perfectly okay for Jana to say, that's not how I wanted you to feel. That wasn't my intention. I'm sorry that you feel that way. And if you give, you can feedback exactly what your partner said, or anyone has said to you. I'm sorry you feel like you've just described. My intention wasn't to do that. My intention was to, and then you give your side of it. Your side of it, what you actually intended to. I apologize. I'm sorry. I was looking to connect you. Maybe I didn't listen carefully enough, or maybe I was working from my own perspective. But my intention certainly wasn't to make you feel X, Y, and Z. It was to make you, it was for us to connect and to understand each other. So it doesn't mean you're certainly not invalidating the other person's feelings. By any stretch, you're acknowledging that they feel in a certain way. You're acknowledging that that it's happened, but you're also explaining what it was that you were trying to do. The purpose behind the conversation. So it's not invalidating their feelings. It's not running roughshod over their feelings or emotions or perception. It's listening. It's feeding back what you've heard and trying again, saying, I'm telling you this from my perspective, it's because X, Y, and Z, and this is why I'm telling you it. And hopefully, when you start, does that make any sense at all? If you're watching it, it does make some sense. Let me know, because it sounds very convoluted. And hopefully, as time goes on, and hopefully as you get more practiced at it, and as you get into the habit of listening with the intention of hearing and believing what your partner's saying, and feeding back what you believe they're saying. So you can say something like, I hear what you're saying. Do you mean? And then you give them the opportunity to say, yes, that's what I mean, or no, it's not, by feeding back what you think you've heard. So you're not jumping to any conclusions. You're not making any assumptions. You're listening, you're hearing, and you're feeding back. And they can say, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And then you can go into it and say, well, I'm really sorry, that wasn't what I intended. Or if he or she says, no, that's not what I mean. Okay, well, that's what I heard. Please, tell me exactly what it was you want. Let's have a conversation about this. Tell me exactly what it was you were trying to explain to me. So that's the one way that you can overcome this feeling, and it makes sure that both parties have the sense that they're being listened to, have the sense that they're actually being given that space to be heard, because that's what we want. That's what real communication is about, and that's what emotional abuse and all these passive aggressive patterns that we have got eradicates that real connection and that ability to actually listen to hear as opposed to listen to answer. And when we can take a step out of that, and we can make a decision that I'm going to sit and I'm going to hear you, and I'm actually going to believe the words that you're telling me, then it changes everything. And with time, it will change the relationship and the way that you interact with each other, because you'll be teaching the people around about you how, new skills and new tools. You'll be teaching them that they can use this in their communication, and that if you are prepared to listen, if you are really listening to hear and feeding back what you hear, over time, normally, they'll fall into line, and that's how the communication will go forward. It doesn't happen the first time, and it doesn't even happen the second time, because, again, we're breaking down patterns of communication. We're breaking down those bad patterns, and we're replacing them with new and healthy patterns. So don't lose heart if you try it once and you get the same stonewall response back as you've always had. Don't give up. Just keep trying and keep trying. Keep doing it without an expectation. Everything we do, if we do it without expectation, it changes behaviour patterns so much faster, because the expectation is felt on the other side. The energy of the expectation is felt on the other side. And if the relationship is slightly based, if the foundation of the relationship is basically eggshells at the moment, then you're kind of treading on very tender ground. So if you can keep those expectations out and know that you're connecting from a place of love, and from a place of really looking for that deeper sense of connection, then perfect. You will get the response. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, but continued behaviour, continued learning will also change the way that it's received on the other side, and will mirror it back to you eventually. So that's to answer Jana's question. Let me just check, because from that we had, let's see, let me just pull it up, apologies. Then we had Kay. Kay asked something that was along similar lines. Kay asked, also along similar lines, when both of us in the marriage remember something happening differently, and I listen to his version and he listens to mine, and then responds to say that I'm just completely wrong, which happens pretty much every time. What do I do? What do I say to continue the conversation and encourage him to accept that he isn't always right all of the time? Okay, that is a tough one. It's a tough one, in as much as it's exactly what I said before. It's learning and teaching by example, but it's also putting a really strong boundary in place. Because effectively what's happening here is somebody is telling you that your feelings, your emotions, and the way that it felt for you is invalid. And that is pretty much what we've talked about all week. That is where emotional abuse really starts to eradicate self-worth, self-belief, and implants a huge amount of self-doubt in your mind. Now, I know that Kay's done a huge amount of work around about this and can stand in her own truth, but if you're just starting your journey and this question resonates with you, how would you approach that? Well, going back to the answer that I gave to Janet, that's a fantastic place to start. Something that I spoke about, I think it was on Thursday, boundaries. It's all about creating strong, healthy boundaries. That is, I am prepared to listen. I'm prepared to listen to hear you. But what I'm not prepared to do is have you tell me what I should and shouldn't be feeling. I'm not prepared to have you minimizing or diminishing how I view a situation or how I felt in a situation. That's not your job. If you have nothing to say to me, then we don't carry on the conversation. I don't need you to agree with me, but I certainly don't need you to tell me that what I feel is wrong. So it's setting a boundary which says, this is how I felt it, this is how it was for me. And communicating that with you, not because, and this might be useful for you, Kay, not because I want you to, to feel bad, not because I want to make you the villain of the situation, but because I want us really to be connected and really to understand each other. This is how it felt for me. I understand your intention wasn't to put me in that position, but that's how I feel. I'm sharing that with you in the hope that, you'll understand that my reaction why my reaction was as it is. If you're not prepared to accept that, then it's very difficult for us to continue with this conversation. So let's leave it there. And again, keep going into the conversation from that place of we are connecting. It's not about putting you down. It's not about, because often what happens is we find ourselves fighting, almost, like we're at war with each other. One of us has got to be right so that the other one is wrong, or one of us has got to be wrong so the other one can be right. Relationships in life don't work like that. Nobody is ever 100% right. Nobody is ever 100% wrong. The pattern between us creates the 100% wrong. So let's not try and apportion blame. Let's take blame out of it, because we're not discussing with the intention of pinning blame to my back or to your back. We're having this conversation because we want to find a better way to communicate, a deeper way to communicate, and a way that we both feel comfortable speaking our truth in this relationship. Now we're talking about romantic relationship here, but this is valid across all of your relationships. And again, another place that I would go back to is how true is it? Often what happens is when we don't feel that we're being heard the way that we want to be, we start putting judgment onto the other person. So, the self-judgment onto the other person. We can't judge ourselves. It's too difficult to look inwards, or it's too complicated to look inwards. So what we tend to do is we mirror it out onto the person in front of us, and we make an assumption about what they are actually meaning or what they're actually saying. And then we have something to fight against. But at the end of the day, and actually at the beginning of the day, it's our own self-judgment, our own assumption, which isn't always correct. So it's being aware of your own thinking, and the whole week has been about self-awareness. If you're here and you've seen the rest of the trainings, you'll know that it's not about pointing the finger of blame at yourself or at anyone else. It's about raising our awareness, how we react in certain situations, how our own patterns of communication, where we can improve on them, where we can improve our boundaries so that other people's patterns of communication aren't eroding our own sense of self. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We need to have firm boundaries in place so that we're not allowing people to stomp all over our own feelings or undermine our feelings and leave us in a place that next time I don't want to speak my truth because you make it too difficult. You make me feel vulnerable when I'm speaking my truth. That's not the point of this connection. This isn't the point of this communication that we're having. It's to find a way to come together. Hope that helps. Hi. There are lots of people, and I can't see how many people are actually on now. Letting go of attachment. Yes. Thank you. Let me see. Add me to your video link emails. Yeah, brilliant. Will do. I'll drop you the link. Jana, you've just joined now, and I answered your question maybe about 10 minutes ago. That was just the end of it. So if you go back to the beginning, you will find everything you need to know. Any other questions? I'm going to check on my phone because it's telling me that there are only a couple of you here, and I'm not seeing the questions that are coming up. So let me just check on my phone. Bear with me. Here I am. Letting go attach an outcome. No, I think I've got. Yeah, I think I've got everybody on. Does anybody have any questions? Because I think those were the only two that we had. So I'll wait for a couple of minutes. If you get any questions, drop them on here. And I'm checking my phone as well because my phone seems to be slightly more reactive than the computer. So what I'm going to do, as I say, what I have been doing all week actually, I set an email system up whereby you can receive these videos directly into your inbox for anyone, I set it up for anyone that wasn't in the group or anyone that didn't want necessarily to follow this on Facebook. If you'd like a copy of those emails, then do drop me your email address here and I'll add you onto the list and you'll receive a daily email just giving you some good, just giving you these videos and maybe a couple of words. And also a way of being able to hit reply and ask any questions that come up for you. My question for you, ladies, is this something that you're interested in going deeper? In as much as would you be open or would you be interested in a course if I were to put together a group training program where we could come together and we could actually go a little bit deeper, quite a lot deeper than I can do here when I'm just talking at you. So a group course where we would come together via Zoom and we'd have weekly coaching calls and really get to know each individual's situation and how we're going to, the tools that you are going to need to step out of that and start transforming those patterns of emotional abuse. If it's something you are interested in, I would very much love to lead you in it. But if this has been more than enough, I don't want to start beating a drum and trying to drum up interest in something that for you isn't necessary. So that's my question to you whilst I'm looking to see if anyone else has asked any questions. It looks like nobody has so far. So who's on live at the moment? Because I can see that there are two of you on at the moment. I don't know who's still on live. I think probably Karen, because you were the last one to answer. And I'll just wait for a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any other questions. The one question that Tracy asked right at the beginning of the week is, should we confront should we confront our partner or the person in front of us whose behaviour is emotionally abusive? And I think I put that question into the group earlier in the week, and I think we got a hugely positive response from it. The general opinion was no, unless it's done in a very careful way. My personal belief is it doesn't do any good to raise awareness with somebody who isn't willing to look at their own behaviour. So it's a very, very personal answer. If you know that the person in front of you is open and is willing and is currently working on self-development, personal development, and has a willingness to look at their behaviour and accept their flaws, if you like, their slight imperfections, because let's be honest, we are all absolutely perfect for the purpose that we've been put here to live out. So anything that we spot in ourselves or we spot in other people was given to us as a learning curve, as a learning tool. We have to navigate life with our whatever defects that are become evident to us. And, and they're there most often to ensure that we do learn the lessons. One of mine, for instance, is absolute and utter stubbornness. I am so stubborn that, I could happily go for weeks without talking to somebody when I decided, if they'd upset me. I didn't have any voice. I didn't know how to defend myself or to raise awareness or to speak my truth, for fear of being told that it wasn't valid. And I didn't want to be told it wasn't valid because I felt so small anyway. So I did sulking, and I was so stubborn that I could sulk for weeks and weeks and weeks. That stubbornness was also the thing that stopped me asking for help when I was just falling to pieces. When my life was just not worth living, when all I could think about is there is no reason to be here anymore, I'd be as well being dead. How, wishing that would happen without me having to take any action. That's, stubbornness got me to that point, but it also got me to the point that I just crashed, burned, and eventually had to hold my hands up and let somebody help me. So in the long run, stubbornness got me to where I needed to be open to learning, because otherwise, if I'd been just a smidge less stubborn, I am sure I wouldn't be here today. I'm sure I wouldn't have taken the path, the learning, the journey that I've taken. So anything that we see in ourselves that we feel is a flaw, anything we spot in other people that we feel is defective or flawed in any way, they're probably the biggest gifts that we'll ever be given, because they're the things that are going to make us really start to scratch away at the surface and do the work that needs to be done. So I'm still waiting to see if oh no, somebody has. It's been delightful getting to know you, and I so appreciate the time and effort you've given us. Oh, thank you. So hi, and also there are people joining all the time. I'm just not sure who's here at any one time. I'll wait for a second to see if anyone comes up with any other comments, questions, or whatever. Let me see. Can't find myself now. Ah, there I am. There I am live. So it appears that nobody has any other questions. If you do, this isn't the end. If you do, drop them under here, and I will certainly answer you here. And if they're, if they're relevant, no, of course they're relevant enough. If they warrant it, and I think it would be useful for the whole group, I'll do another quick session like this, just answering any other questions that have come up. So if you're watching this on replay and I didn't touch on your burning issue, pop your question below here, and I'll certainly make sure that it's answered. In the meantime, my question, thank you. I love hearts. In the meantime, my question to you is valid. Is this something that you would like to go more, deeper with? Is it something that that if I organised a group programme, you would be interested in taking part on, or anybody that would benefit from taking part in it? Because I don't want to spend days and hours putting together a training and you all say, do you know what, we don't need it. And I don't want to be in here saying, anyone want it? And you all saying, oh God, I wish you'd shut up, because that doesn't help anybody. So thank you, ladies, for spending time with me this week. Thank you for coming and joining the group. And I've really loved your openness. I've really loved your ability to say, you know what, I'm not perfect, and that's fine by me, because that's what it's all about, taking responsibility for ourselves, being able to know that we don't have to be perfect. And in fact, life is so much more fun when we're trying our best and we're not trying to be perfect. You get so much more out of it. And it's been incredible how open you've all been. So thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in the group. Have a lovely evening. So bye, everyone.